Well, welcome to another episode of a podcast about names and other stuff. If you have not been listening to the other episodes, that's okay. The good thing about how I'm doing this, or at least I'm hoping to do this, is that if you only want to hear about one person's story, you can. You can do that. Or you cannot. You can listen to the whole thing. I think it's good to listen to everybody because each person is unique, different, peculiar, interesting. And I will say that the person you're going to hear from today, this first episode of this individual, they are as well unique and interesting. They are somebody who I am thankful that I get to know them. And you're going to hear today in this time of us conversing, talking about, changing names, changing from a birth name to a chosen name, of struggling to be able to find how to be successful and happy and at peace in times of fullness when you grew up in times of so much emptiness and struggle. And then even just still like the idea of the weight. This is something I don't understand personally, but this individual today, you're going to hear about the weight of being an immigrant child of refugee parents and what that is to live in a world when you've already started in such a place. So yeah, I'm excited for you guys to listen to these. I was getting just pumped listening to them again because I enjoyed the conversation recording, but now listening to them again is even more like, oh man, this is good stuff. So you're going to listen and get to meet another human being. And remember, the idea is we learn about these names that these other people have. But hopefully as you're listening, you're thinking about what names do you carry? Who are you? And how do these names affect you? How have they shaped you? How do you use them to shape yourself? How do you use them to present yourself in the world? And hopefully, just maybe you will walk away feeling more human, feeling more loved and worthwhile, but also feel encouraged to go out there and explore the names of the people around you. Maybe talk to your parents a little differently, or your spouse differently, or the stranger next to you, saying, you know what are your names? And how do they reflect who you are? So, listen up, here we go. Next person. All right, yes, it is actually recording. Yes. So we are recording, and I'm not going to say your name just yet because that's not how this works. And I know you are in the dark more than anybody else that I've done this with so far, because I have told you next to nothing about what we're doing other than I wanted to talk with you. And you were actually confused at first because you thought I wanted to talk to your husband, but no, I want to talk to you. And so in this podcast, what I'm doing is this is called a podcast about names and other stuff. And we are literally just going to talk about your name. Anybody else who's listening to this, they would have heard in the introduction, something I'm going to share with you now too. So if you didn't listen to the introduction, you're going to hear the story again. But kind of what inspired this was a chapel service I was at a while back where they were talking about Judges 19 and talking about the concubine and her horrible story that she went through at the end of her life and how her name was never given and how many people are in the Bible whose names are not mentioned. But at the same time, how many things is there about us? How many things do we carry in our lives? Names essentially that we have, and they have such meaning that they define us or we use them to define ourselves, but there's also names that nobody ever hears about us. And so this is going to just be about talking about you and all the names that you carry, because as we talk about that, we'll get an idea about you as a person. So that's what this is. So let's start out, tell everybody, what is your name?
Well, my name is Christy Chanley Taylor. So that's my full legal name.
Okay.
But it was not my birth name. My birth name is actually Chanley Bong. So my name has actually changed over the years depending on where I have been in my life. Obviously, being a child of immigrants, my name, it means something different in Chinese than it does in English. In English, it's just Chanlei. But the meaning behind my Chinese name, which in characters, it's Chunlai in Mandarin, actually has a very deep meaning. I actually didn't find out about the true meaning behind my name until I was in college and I was taking a course in Chinese, and we had to write a letter to our parents, and my dad, he responded back explaining the meaning behind my name. So when you look at the characters in my name, Chunlai, it's just simply, when you just read it, it's spring is coming. And so I'm thinking like, oh, okay, it's spring is coming. But the meaning behind it is, in the Chinese culture, spring is a season of rebirth, of new beginnings. And so when I was born, my parents, they had just survived the Khmer Rouge that was happening in Cambodia. And so they were in a camp, a refugee camp in Thailand. And so I was born there. And so my dad, he took my birth as a mark of a new beginning for their lives, because they had survived the war and now they were trying to resettle and reestablish their life. And so for them, I was like a symbol of their new life after the war. And so that's why my name is Chun-Lai, spring is coming, because my birth is a mark of their new beginning in their life.
Okay.
So I found that out in college, and that was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting, because in the past I was like, oh yeah, my name is just, spring comes and that's it. Pretty lame, I thought. But actually, when my dad explained it to me, it has a deeper meaning. So I appreciate it more now than I did when I was growing up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's and thanks for sharing, because I knew a little bit about how you had, your original Chinese name as opposed to your American name, as it were. But I did not know that about your parents. I mean, and we've known each other for a little while now. And I will add in, just full disclosure, one of the reasons, Christy, why I wanted to talk to you, especially as opposed to your husband, is because sad but true reality of my life is you're the only person I know who I know personally who is of Asian descent and has a mastery of the English language enough that we could do this together. I do know some other Asian people where I'm at now, but they're still learning English, and so I wouldn't be able to do this. And I wanted to have people of different backgrounds and stories. And so I will admit that I'm kind of using you for your ethnicity to a degree, but that was also as part of it, because I mean, I know that you have a story that's unique. And like, I didn't know that about your parents surviving the Khmer Rouge, which is a horrible, horrible event in history that a lot of people know nothing about. But I had no idea about that part of your story.
Yeah, so I mean, that was a big part of me growing up here in America. Was coming over here, or having the opportunity to come here, was because of all that happened, back in Cambodia. And so when the borders opened here, and the United States was open to accepting refugees from Southeast Asia, we were able to come over. And actually, another story to add on to my name. So in Mandarin, it's Chun-Lai. So in English, somehow the translator got it to be Chon-Lei. So then that in itself is like not a direct translation. The name is, butchered pretty much. Yeah. So when I was growing up, going to school, everybody would not be able to pronounce my name correctly. They'd be like Chon, and I don't know. I just remember being called Chung Li according to the video game that was popular at the time, Street Fighter.
Yeah, that was bad timing for you, right?
It was. And so then my name became Chung Li, which is not even my name. But, I went by that name because that's what people called me, my peers. And I actually did not like my name at all, because nobody could pronounce it right.
Yeah.
But, once I got to high school and we went into the process of becoming citizens, then I was looking for an English name that I was like, okay, no one's going to be able to mess up my name now, because it's going to be an English name and they can read it and they're not going to mess it up. And it's going to be one that's clear and simple. And so I picked Christy out of a book series that was my favorite growing up, the Babysitter's Club. Uh-huh. And the main character, Christy, was the one that came up with the idea, the Babysitter's Club, because I just love the idea of someone who is, passionate about what she believes in, and very a go-getter, someone who is about business. And so I just loved her character. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick that name. But then come to find out, in college, there's so many Christies, and people misspell or spell it differently. And then they shorten it to Chris or Chrissy or Christine, or, so they mess that up too. So I don't know. I guess I'm not good with names. So.
And how old were you when that happened, when you chose the name Christy for yourself?
I think I was in high school, so I believe I was a freshman or sophomore.
Okay. All right. So the name Christy for you, you're thinking this is going to embody the sort of person that I hope that I am in this world. This is the kind of person I want to be, and so I'm going to take on this name and be this kind of person.
Yeah. Well, actually, so a lot of people in my generation becoming a citizen, let's say in the 90s, they wanted an American name because they wanted to assimilate to the American culture. Like my cousins who are 5 to 10 years older than me, they themselves also picked American names. They did not keep their Chinese name. I kept mine as my middle name.
Mhm.
But yeah, we wanted American names because we wanted to blend in, because we were essentially made fun of for having, weird sounding names.
Yeah.
And then in college, that was where I was exposed to a lot more people. And even in the Asian culture, there's so many people from different parts of Asia. Like I met people from Taiwan, from Thailand, from Cambodia, and also from Hong Kong. So they actually most of them carried English names too. And so it was just like just trying to blend in with everyone else with an easy name that everyone can pronounce.
Yeah, but it's funny. So I was actually, and I mentioned this. I actually mentioned this in my sermon on Sunday. I work with some immigrants here locally, and I recently had a conversation with a couple, a married couple, and they were working towards citizenship, and they were contemplating changing their names. Because their names coming from the part of Mexico they're from, the wife has a very Aztec name, and the husband's name is Jesus, and he's like, people don't like the name Jesus out here, and I actually was telling them how I encourage them to keep their name and not to change them, because they have such more important stories. Like the wife, her name actually is a family name, a family tradition with her name and stuff like that. And so it's interesting because you're right. Like I didn't think enough about the idea of the drive to assimilate, because me, I'm so much of a forget assimilating. I'm not going to blend in anyways. Might as well just own it. That's kind of me, and I didn't think about the other side of things. So do you think with younger immigrants, are you finding that they tend to not change their names though?
It depends if the parents themselves are adults growing up in. Let me just rephrase that. It depends on the parents. If the parents came as an adult, then the kids probably will have like non-American names, but maybe like very American sounding names. Like an example would be like Angela, and then they would have like their Chinese name would sound similar to the name Angela.
Okay.
Auntie, So they might do something like that. But I don't know. I mean, some people like they don't want to go with blending in. They're just going to own it and stand out. And as I've gotten older, I realized I probably should not have changed my name, because now that I'm married and my full name, it's like you can't even tell I'm Asian like by my name, unless you see my middle name and you're like, okay, there's something different about her maybe. But I mean, first name and last name, Christy Taylor, is pretty general. Yeah. So it's kind of like,
we'll be honest, Christy, it sounds really white. It does.
Yeah, it does. And
but your husband's not. I mean, Robert's black. It's not like he's not. But I mean, Robert Taylor also doesn't sound necessarily black either. So I mean, like, yeah, that's so you blend in that sense. I mean, you match your husband.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess on applications it looks pretty safe, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's not unique in any way.
Yeah. Well, here's another name essentially that I could say that you have as part of your story. That again, I didn't realize this about your story before. Is that of refugee? When you came to America, you said your family, you guys immigrated as refugees.
Yes.
What is that? What was that like? What does that mean? How does that affect you even now, or does it affect you now?
Well, I came as a baby, so I really don't have any first-hand experience, but I saw how it was for my cousins, and I saw how it was for my parents. And so for them, when they came over, they were very like worried and scared whether or not they would be able to stay permanently here in the States. They were always worried about like having to be shipped off somewhere else, because they weren't sure if they would have to run to another country or be, kicked out because they weren't citizens. And so for my generation, in the 80s and 90s, it was a big deal to become a citizen of the, just to be called a citizen of the United States, because then it meant they couldn't kick you out for one, but two, you had a permanent home. So I know that's important for people who are refugees. It's kind of like you left your home where you were born, and then you come over here to a new country, not knowing the language, not knowing how things are, and just leaning on and depending on the people who spoke the language. So my parents depended heavily on their community, the Cambodian community in Long Beach. And they had like people who were there before them who spoke English, who had contacts there, who knew people, who had access to information, resources. So they depended heavily on people in that community. And then once they got more acclimated and comfortable with how things were in America, because it's very different than it is or was in Cambodia, then they were able to venture off and like understand, like, okay, this is, how we do things here in the United States. This is where you go get resources. This is where, if you want to go to certain stores or find a lawyer or, anything, you go to this person, they will know where to point you to. And you kind of trust almost blindly to whoever they refer you to. I remember one time, my parents, they needed someone to do paperwork for us to go get our teeth cleaned and everything. And they didn't know which dentist to go to. So we just went to one that everybody went to in Long Beach. And it was just like this one person. And you have all these like people who, were all Cambodian, who went to this one person.
Yeah.
And it was always crowded, but it was the only person they knew. So
and it might have been the worst, but who would ever know, because it's the only person they know to go to. It might have been the best too. Yep. They wouldn't even realize they were getting the best. They know they're just getting what they can get.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and so then you came over. You were, so I guess you were like a year old or younger than that when you guys came over.
I was a month old.
Okay.
So my mom had to have me first before she was able to come over.
Okay, so you were kind of like their get into America free pass.
Not really, but I mean, I can say, I am technically born in Thailand, but I'm pretty much raised here in the States. So I'm that 1.5 generation.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's like Manazi, he's not born American. The good thing about that is you never have to worry about being president, right? Like, that's good. Yeah. Well,
Very true.
So for the most part, then you're Californian, which most Californians aren't born in California anyways. So you have them beat because you got there so early in life. Like, what does it mean to you then? Or do you own that identity as Californian? Do you like, no, I'm not a Californian, I just live in California?
Yeah, I can say I'm a Californian because I pretty much grew up here, even though the way I was brought up was not. I wouldn't say that it's the life of a regular or normal Californian. I grew up like an immigrant, I want to say, because all the things that we did at home was not, it was like my parents saving and scrapping and recycling and like, living very frugal, and like just the way they raised us was how they were raised.
Yeah.
So it's a very Asian household, not necessarily Americanized. So
I mean, I would counter. I'd say from what I remember too, just growing up there myself, I think that actually is a decently common, at least Southern California, because you have so many immigrants and different populations. I mean, I know like with my family as well, and how they manage things financially, and then thinking true, to other people we know of whose families, Hispanic immigrants and whatnot. In that sense, while yours was a unique Cambodian American experience, as it were, it also it seems so much of, especially LA, of these different ethnic groups of individuals who are trying to make it in America, and have something better for their kids, but they don't have much to start with themselves. But that's not going to stop them.
Yeah, very true.
So you are a daughter. Well, we can start with that title, because I met your parents, so I know they exist. They're real. You were born. What does it mean to you to be a daughter? What does that mean to you?
To me, to be a daughter is let me just say, as a child of immigrants, I became the unofficial translator at a very young age.
Okay.
Because my parents didn't really learn to speak or read English. It was like me translating everything. I just remember translating everything from school, the paperwork, during parent conferences, everything, like at a very young age. So that was my job to do for them. And so for me to be a daughter is to be that almost like liaison for them, because they came not knowing anything, and then like I'm the one growing up in this um in this culture, and then also learning the language, and so I'm the one that's supposed to help them wherever they need. So
Yeah.
I think most people, they think, oh, as a daughter, you're supposed to be the one that is loved on and taken care of by your parents. But at a very young age, I just felt like, okay, because I speak English, because I understand English, then I'm supposed to be the one taking care of them, making sure that they're not being taken advantage of, making sure that they understand what their rights are,
Yeah.
yeah, stuff like that.
And
So I think I have a,
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
is that still part of your role even now as their daughter?
Yeah, because my mom is no longer here. And so then,
Yeah.
like, for my dad, just helping him adjust to, like everyday things, like in terms of like his doctor's appointments, his medication, like health insurance, dealing with that, like making sure like he's getting the services that he needs and that he qualifies for, and that he's not just being brushed aside because he doesn't speak English well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I have some quotes. I didn't open with a quote with you. You're the first time I didn't open with one, but don't worry, I have a couple of them. And I have
Okay.
one that I always do with my closing. I'm keeping that one. But
Mhm.
as we're hearing your story, I'm thinking of this one that I have. It's a quote actually from Pastor Marv. You know Pastor Marv too. And he has
Yeah.
this quote that I wrote. He says, "Emptiness is easier for some of us to handle than fullness." And as I'm hearing your story about the level of, just the struggle and to a degree some of the emptiness, but where your life is now, it's not that everything is perfect, not at all, because we still live in this world. But I think it would be safe to say that the life that you get to have for your children with your husband has more fullness in it than the life that you had when you were a child yourself. And so have you seen some of this to be true even in yourself, that sometimes the fullness that your kids have as opposed to the emptiness to a degree that you had is harder to walk through than it was with your life?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, because I tell Robert, like, he's like, Chrissy, you're so extra sometimes. I'm like, I know. 'Cause growing up, like, my parents, they did what they had to do to, for us to survive, for us to be able to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't very involved in like our schoolwork, our childhood, in terms of like, making sure we had play days, making sure we were, went to birthday parties or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, worried about when's the next meal.
Yeah.
Do you guys have clothes? Do we have roof over our heads, kind of a deal?
Yeah.
And so, as a parent now, for my kids, like I go over and beyond because I want to make sure my kids are like, they go to every single birthday party they're invited to, even if they don't like the person, because I can take them. Or like their classroom is having a party, okay, I'm gonna go there and help out and do whatever I can do. And so also at church, I'm too involved in like the children's ministry, just doing things, just making sure like they see that I'm involved.
Yeah. So sometimes that's a struggle for you. You think of finding that balance of, now that you have this fullness in life, saying it's okay for me not to do all the things.
Yeah, I struggle with that because I think I'm able-bodied, so why not? What else would I be doing? And so I want them to be able to remember that, oh yeah, mom was involved in like all these things. Like, oh, I remember seeing her here, when I did, whatever performance it was. My parents, they did attend performances. I remember them going to like a Christmas performance when we performed in like elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
But there was like little things that they actually attended, because one, they didn't understand what was going on, and so then it's like you sitting through a whole concert, in a language that you didn't understand. So
Yeah.
there was no appeal to go. But yeah, I mean, I do have memories of them going, but it was like very, very seldom. And so for me, if I can, for my kids, I will go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and so, okay, we've talked about your kids a little bit. You are also a mom. I've also seen these children. They are real. They're not imaginary. How is that title, how's that name been important in your life? Like, what does being a mom mean for you?
So Mia just turned 14. So I've been a mom 14 years.
Yeah.
But it feels like I've been a mom longer, just because the days are long, but the years, they do go by fast. And yeah, like I feel like me being a mom now, it's almost like full circle because I was a daughter for so long.
Hmm.
And then it's like being the mom now, it's like, oh, I understand what my parents well, I understand more what my parents went through and the struggles that they had, like the decisions that they had to make. I kind of understand them more now because in the growing up, I was like always thinking like, why is it that that person gets to have this and I don't? And always comparing about what I don't have as opposed to what, I did have. And now that when my kids ask for another toy from Target or, another game, when I say no, I understand now because it's not in the budget or it's not, a toy is not going to feed you. So I'm more empathetic towards the decisions that my parents made.
Yeah. Have you had those
And
conversations with your parents and said, hey, I get it now, I understand?
um, yeah, with my dad especially, before we never used to really talk. He was just always there. But since my mom has passed, like I've actually gotten to know my dad more now, and so he shared a lot about his early life coming here at 39. Yeah,
Okay.
39 years old,
Wow.
coming to America,
That's
and
like about the same age we are
how
now.
yeah. And so, and, trying to understand this new life that you have here in America, that's different culture, different language, and just how he had to adjust really fast because he was raising kids at the same time. And, yeah, it was just trying to, like, I think I appreciate him more for the fact that he chose not to assimilate
Hmm.
because he tried really hard to hold on to his identity because that was the only thing that he could bring over
Yeah.
on the plane over here. And so at first as a kid I was very resentful that he didn't try to learn English and he didn't try to be more Americanized.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it more now because then it's at 39 he is who he is, and he's pretty set on his lifestyle and the way he was raised. And so it's for me, I I really I don't know how else to describe, but I'm really grateful that he did not assimilate like I wanted him to when I was younger. I appreciate the fact that he held on to his culture, his identity, because now I feel like I have a piece of that with me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Especially, it's like, as you said before, how you struggle with, was I wrong to choose to change my name? But they sit there and say, well, you know what? My dad has preserved a bit of this for me that I can tap into, I can
Mm-hmm.
learn from, I can point to, I can build off of. I haven't lost all of my cultural identity because my dad held on to it for me.
Yeah. And in college, it was funny because like when I went to UC Irvine, and so I'm in college, I'm 18, and it's like I meet all these different like Asian people because I grew up in San Bernardino, so it was like a small Cambodian community that I grew up in. So I wasn't even like one of the Cambodian people, even though my parents were from there, they were born there. I
Hmm.
was that Chinese girl who was in the Cambodian group. And so then when I came to
Yeah.
college, I was a Chinese girl, but then it was like, but you're not fully Chinese because you didn't come from China. You didn't come from Taiwan. You
Yeah.
came from Cambodia, which is like, you're not even real Chinese. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So when they ask you, when you meet people, they're like, oh, what kind of Chinese are you? And it's like, wait, I thought Chinese was just Chinese, but there's different categories that even,
Yeah. It's a big
you
country.
know, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so then it was always like, am I Chinese enough? I guess I'm not. I mean, I don't have a Chinese name. I
Mhm.
don't really speak the language, that well. So maybe I'm not. I mean, that was like the conversation I was having, with myself when I was meeting all these different people from, different countries and everything. So it was definitely interesting.
So even now, do you identify as just Asian American or Chinese American or Chinese Cambodian American or just American?
Um, so so in the past I used to say I'm Chinese American. And so I want to say, I don't even know if this is correct, but I am American by nationality. Ethnically, I am Chinese. Culturally, I am also American because I feel like yeah,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been here so long. I've assimilated pretty well to the American culture. But there are instances of myself that I feel that are influenced by my Chinese culture from my parents.
Yeah. I will say that if my wife could choose one thing that she really loves from your Chinese culture from your parents, it's your mom's fish sauce.
Yeah.
She still talks about that. All these years later, she still tells people that's the best fish sauce in the world.
Yeah. It's because she diluted it with love.
So continuing the idea of family a little bit here, we haven't talked at all about siblings and the idea, like, you know, do you have siblings? Are you a sister? If so, what does that mean? Sort of a thing.
So I do have siblings. I am the oldest. I have a younger brother, and then a younger sister. And so even though we are all from the same family, I feel like our experiences are very different because my brother was born a year after we got here to America, and then my sister was like 4 years after my parents have been in America. So my sister has an English name because by then they're like, okay, we're going to give her an American name, an English name. My brother, he has a Chinese name, Kinsan. So so they at that 1 year into living in America, they were still like, you know, holding on to the fact that they may or may not go back to Cambodia because they weren't sure whether or not, you know, they would be shipped off or not. But so as the eldest, everything always falls on me. I remember they would get in trouble. They would do something, get hurt, but I would get in trouble. So I would always be blamed for however they were acting or behaving.
Now, do you do that as a parent too?
Yes, I do. I do. It's innate. I don't know why, but it is. But I'm also feel like I'm the one that is responsible for them, for making sure that whatever wisdom or knowledge that I have, I pass it on to them. So going through school, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to have this project in 4th grade. So make sure you do this now so that you'll be ready in 4th grade for this project. I mean, I would try to, you know, drop hints and tips for my siblings as they were going through the grades just to make it easier for them.
Yeah.
All
right, and then and I have one other one. This one's a harder question, really, family related. But I think for this episode, especially, we've really been digging in on you, and especially culturally and family wise. You mentioned already. We've talked about a couple times how your mother's passed away. How long ago was that? I feel it was a couple years ago, I think.
Yeah, it was in 2020.
Yeah. So it's been a few years. What is that for you? Being the daughter of your mother, but she's no longer here with us. Like I said, there are some names that don't necessarily have names to them, you know, like I don't know what to call that because it's not the same as being orphaned or widowed, you know, but that really is a category of being of your mom isn't your mom's not here. What is that like for you, especially as a mother, as you're you know, raising daughters of your own and raising your children, as you're connecting more with your father and the conversations you can have with him and maybe you're not having with your mom, like how is that? What is it like carrying that?
There's like an emptiness. Yeah. I really miss having her just to talk to, because I know she used to complain a lot. Just like, oh, you know, you shouldn't do this because that's not the right way to do things, or you need to make sure when you make food, you make it this way because this is the right way. So I miss that, the backhand compliments that she used to give. But also at the same time, it's kind of like I'm happy that she is not here, because when she was here, she was ill. So it's kind of bittersweet because I know she's at a better place. She's not having to deal with dialysis anymore. So I miss her physically being here, but I'm also grateful that she doesn't have to deal with all the physical ailments that she was going through, because I know it was probably really painful. So yeah.
And thanks for sharing, Chris. I know that I cut you off guard with things like that, but I also know that sometimes when it comes to things like that, it's a very real, it's a serious hole and emptiness and pain that you carry, that you live with, and so often in life we go through life and we don't talk about these things, we don't share these things, people don't ask these things, and as a result, that's kind of what I wanted to do with this whole podcast. Is as a result, we have entire sections of our lives that are going unnamed and unshared, and in a way we're being unknown because of that. And so thanks for sharing that, because while that's not all of you, it is a part of you.
Yes.
And as your mom is an important person to you, she always will be. And so there's no way that it couldn't be important that she's not necessarily here, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, I want to switch gears and make it a little bit lighter, to close this out a bit. I want to talk about you as a friend, because I know externally, especially seeing you as a friend of my wife. When we talk about, like, we don't live in California anymore, and we don't regret that. Like, for the most part, we don't miss California, but we do miss our friends. I know my wife very much so misses you. Like,
Yeah.
you are. If there's only one thing she misses from California, it's you. That would be it. And so, like, I want to talk about you as a friend. How important to you is friendship and relationship? I know I see one of the things that's beautiful that you do. If you happen to know Christy, you already know this about her on Facebook. If you don't know her, I'm not saying you should go stalk her, but like, it's like the only thing you post on Facebook are just how much you appreciate relationships in your life and spending time with other
Yeah.
people, in family and in friendship. So how important is this idea of being a friend to you?
Well, for me, like growing up, I was always like the shy one, right? Really quiet. And then I had friends, but I didn't know, like, because, I wasn't fully Cambodian, so I didn't know if they were like consider me like a friend.
Mhm.
But I always felt like the relationships that you create with people, that it's important that they're meaningful and that there's a true connection there. So I know that now there are seasons that we go through, that we have close relationships with certain people through seasons in our lives. But whatever season I'm in, I'm hoping that um, the connections that I make during that season to the people that I have in my life at that particular time, that they are, um, that those people know and understand that I am grateful for their presence in my life. Because so my father-in-law passed away, I want to say over 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember at his funeral that I saw they had made a poster of all his accolades and all the achievements that he made and that he had done as a firefighter and everything else, the school that he went to, and it was like this great presentation, this great board of all the things that he did. But what I remember is like that's not the important thing in life. That certificate that he got for completing this course, or being number one this on this competition, that wasn't important. I mean, it was important at the time, but that once he passed, the relationships that he left behind, the connections, the memories, those were more important. And so I think from that experience, like, I just more intentionally sought out people to make sure, like, they knew that if no one else thought of them, I did for that day, and that I wanted them to know that I smiled because I thought of them and I prayed for them, and that they mattered. And so, yeah, for me, it's the making the connection and the relationships. And so for my friendship with Laura, you guys, like, honestly, I tell this to everybody, like, Laura was my first friend at SBC. She was the one that came up to me and was like, hey, you want to sit with us at the park? Because I was just sitting there by myself, like in this big crowd, and no one else came up to me, but Laura did. And so she will always be my first friend that I remember. And so for that, I love her for.
Well, thank you. It is a mutual thing. I tell you, like, I mean, even now as I think about it, to a degree, I could say that your friendship, in a way, saved our marriage, because, I mean, as lonely as you talk about you being my wife as well, she was somebody who was very lonely in that season of our lives. And you being her friend gave her that sense of being seen and mattering for herself, not because she's my wife or anything else, but because she's your friend. And so that's definitely a mutual thing. It really is.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I want my children to understand that too. And so when we do things, it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be, this big thing that costs a lot of money. Even the little things, like spending time with people, like sharing a cupcake. I want them to see that there is joy in that, and that there is importance in that, because not everybody can go get a cupcake or go get boba. My kids love getting boba.
Oh,
Not everybody can get boba and enjoy it with their friends. Like, for you to be able to do this with your friends, like enjoy that time, enjoy the time sitting there laughing, talking with each other. Like I pray that that's one of the things that I pass on to my kids, that, you know, it's all about the relationships that they make with one another, and that they connect with other people. And it's not about how much they accomplish in life in terms of like, oh, I got this degree, I have, you know, all these accolades for all this like academic success or anything like that. It's about the relationships. I think that's most important, because once we leave this world, what's left? It's the relationship, the memories that they have of us. That's what lives on. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, anybody who's listening, we're going to pick this up here in a bit with the second part. Christy, thank you so much for what we've talked about so far. And again, I'm sorry for making you cry a little bit, but thank you for sharing, because I do want people to get a sense of who you really are. You are an amazing, wonderful person, which is why I wanted to talk with you. Not that Robert's not cool too. Robert's he's cool, but I really wanted to talk with you because I knew, even though a lot of stuff you shared so far were parts of your story I didn't even know. I knew you have so much amazing, beautiful things for people to hear about. And so, yeah, so thanks for sharing. And we're going to take I'm going to push the button here to stop recording here in a second. We're going to take a break, and we're going to start on the second half. Okay?
Okay.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution, organization, or corporation. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. All persons who participated did so of their own free will and speak for themselves only, regardless of any personal affiliations they may possess. This podcast has been a production of Salt.Light.Love Ministries. All rights reserved.